Hello and welcome to this edition of In the State House with Senator Jason Lewis and Representative Michael Day. My name is Alan Macdonald and it's my pleasure to host a discussion today on the state issues in the State House. Let me start, Senator Lewis, Representative Michael Day, great to see you two gentlemen.
Always great to see you, Alan.
Thank you so much
Thank you, Alan.
Giving this opportunity to us to really kind of catch up with what's going on. There's so much.
Thank you. Good to be back with both of you.
Oh, yeah, it's great to have you here. And you're in the middle of just finishing the state budget. This is when we're filming this edition. And there's so much happening through the budget, which is really a foundation for the year ahead. And I'd be interested to see the kinds of highlights that you feel we should be aware of at the local level. Let me start with you, Senator Lewis.
Sure, yeah, so we are, it's a 6-month process that we go through every year to finalize the state budget, and it is now roughly about a $40 billion budget, and you know, it covers spending on everything from our public schools to our public universities, to our roads and bridges, to our healthcare system, environmental programs, mental health and substance abuse. So a wide range of different services are accounted for in the state budget. The challenge we've had is that even though the state economy has been quite strong the last few years, and our unemployment rate is really at a level we haven't seen since maybe 15, 20 years ago. Despite that, tax revenues have been lower than anticipated, and no one's quite sure exactly why. There's a number of different theories for that from economists, but as a result, we've had to scale back some of our projections for what we would have in terms of tax revenues coming in for next year. So that's made it very challenging because as we've gone through the budget process, we've had to make those adjustments. The things, however, that I think both Representative Day and I really fight for, and I'm pleased even in this final budget, we've been able to protect is funding for our K through 12 for our schools. We were able to once again increase funding for our schools, and also increase money for local aid, which is very important to our cities and towns for things like police department, fire department, senior centers, that sort of thing. And there's also some there's strong funding in there for healthcare, including mental health and substance abuse, and some of the other very important programs that our communities rely on. So unfortunately, it's not as much as we would really like to be able to do in many areas because we had to make a lot of tough choices, but I think we've still managed to preserve some of the most important areas of investment.
I know Representative Day, I saw recently we had a nice grant that came to us, I think on the conservation end of things that I saw you were in the paper with, and I think Susan McPhee.
That's right, yeah.
Nice, huh? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Green Communities Grant. So Winchester, again, I always say it, doing well by doing good. With Susan McPhee and town leadership as well, was able to secure a sizable grant. I think there were a couple of different smaller grants going to, lighting in our schools, Lincoln Elementary, the McCall Middle. A few of those small things that they were able to get, I think 90% of what they applied for, we were able to get through on the Green Communities Grant, which was great news.
It is great.
On our end. And just picking up on Senator Lewis's point, the budget has been more challenging than others for some reason. And again, there are a lot of different theories as to why the economy remains sluggish for tax collection purposes. But working together, we were able to get an increase for Winchester Chapter 70 funding, our school funding, over $8 million, which is an all-time high since I've been there, certainly. An increase from last year's numbers on local aid as well. And a earmark, which is fairly unusual given the austerity of this budget. Since both chambers passed the budgets, we ended up chopping about, I think, $400 million of spending alone, and $700 million from the bottom line of the budget. And so we were able to working together, preserve that $50,000 earmark for Winchester's Aberjona River restoration, which is a great piece, that one less thing that the taxpayers here have to foot the bill for, frankly, to continue our downtown revitalization. So, silver lining, I think, to a tough budget season. The governor, just moments before we came on the air, announced his vetoes, and so we're going to be looking at those pretty closely over the next few days in determining what we go forward on overriding and what we allow to stand. as
Well,
we
it
get
does
going.
seem like there's more emphasis on the grant type of situations. I think there was a clean energy grant that came our way through your good work, some $236,000, I think. That was the one we were just talking about, I guess, but there was another one that I was trying to think of that was in, maybe it was in the healthcare.
Well, we got
world.
complete streets as well. So
Okay, yeah.
$400,000 for complete streets, which
Yes.
I believe is the second time we've been able to secure that for Winchester.
I think the second round of
second round of
funding,
the funding.
from that program, yes.
But you're right,
That's right.
it's, you've got to get more creative now.
Yeah.
And I think Winchester has positioned itself very well to be able to take advantage of these programs.
Well, it seems like you've done well with the special projects. Just flipping around, transportation, the bikeway, I know you had a groundbreaking for the Tri-Community Bikeway in Greenway. That was pretty good.
Yes,
so-
well, it's only been
Short
30-some years, Alan, right, that project's been kicking around. I mean, we have to go back to our predecessors in the role Mike now holds that I used to as state representative, but Whip Saltmarsh and then Paul Casey, and have all worked on this project. And each one handed it off to his successor, and each one tried to move it along, and it's exciting news that we finally are underway, that the project's being constructed now. And that'll be 6 miles of new multi-use path, and it'll run all the way from Wedgemere Station through Winchester, through a little piece of Woburn, and then through Stoneham. And we think it's going to be a great new recreational asset, in our communities. And that's it's being funded through state and federal transportation dollars. So it's
Well,
a great opportunity
great
for
resource
us,
once
for
yeah.
our community.
Well, the working together among communities seems to be going more and more. I mean, as you're saying, you gotta have to do more things to draw it out. And I'm thinking, if I can jump over to healthcare, where both of you have been really involved. You're involved in the Substance Use and Recovery Committee. And you've been on the Prevention and Wellness Trust Fund, which I think we were the first in the nation 4 or 5 years ago.
Yes.
I think you were involved in, Jason. But that's another area where we see outside sources coming in to help with municipal government, public service organizations, and healthcare providers, but all coming together where you can't just do it on state budget.
Yeah,
Right.
particularly in the healthcare world, the government is going to be limited as to what it can accomplish. In this problem, substance use is its own animal that's just well beyond the scope of what government can do on its own.
Yeah.
And so without the private institutions coming in, without the healthcare existing facilities coming in to assist and lend their expertise, would be really adrift, I think, in that area. So it's been good to see, society kind of turning back to this issue and agreeing that everyone's got to get in the boat here to help out, because without that, we'd really be in dire straits. And I, to the wellness piece as well, I think, with your leadership, we've been able to get ahead of the ball. We need to get a little farther ahead, but changing the way we look at healthcare and preventative health and wellness is the way to actually save money in the long run and make us a healthier society.
It's where the industry is
Exactly.
moving for sure. And, I know that you've been involved, both of you, again, a lot of things, but I know, Senator Lewis, the Pregnancy Fairness Act, I think there was a lot of attention to that to make sure that with all the other things that we want to be fair to people with, that's one that really needed some attention.
Yep. Well, it's interesting. You mentioned, Alan, that is legislation that we're going to has passed both the House and Senate, and we're going to finish up later this week, final work on that, and send it to Governor Baker. And what that legislation does is it ensures that we have more and more, of course, women in our workforce, and we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be successful and move along in their careers. And one of the things that we have found can be a barrier for some women is because most women, who are in the workforce at some time or another in their working career will become pregnant, and Under current law, if somebody just needs a very simple accommodation, maybe they need more frequent restroom breaks, or we've heard stories of women who just needed a stool to be able to sit on, to do their job. And most employers, are great and do the right thing, but there unfortunately are some, enough examples where that doesn't happen, and that has been, very challenging for these women and their families. So. This legislation, I think, will really put Massachusetts in the forefront of the country in terms of recognizing that everyone, should be treated, with dignity at work, and someone who is pregnant, we want to be able to support them, and as long as she can continue to work, to be able to do so and support her family. So, and the other good thing about this legislation was it was really worked out in a collaborative manner. So various, the business community, advocates, legal experts worked very closely with us in the legislature, in order to work this out.
Well, you've had a lot. The healthcare seems to be, not only is it a big budget issue, but there's so many issues in and around it. And I know you've both been involved. If I could think back, there was a Kick Butts Day or some such that was going on about how to get people to quit smoking and be in the wellness category. But so much of that you're both working on, whether it's in the drug opioid field or it's in the smoking field, or I want to open up to hear what's going on in the world of the marijuana discussions between the Senate and the House.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they announced, again, just moments before we came on today, that we have a deal. And so we'll be getting the details of that. Senator Lewis is the vice chair on that committee. My understanding is that they've kind of split the difference on a number of the major sticking points. And Senator Jalen was the chair of that committee.
That's
was
right.
involved in the conference committee as well. So Winchester was well represented in that committee. But yeah, we've finally got a deal. It took a couple weeks of long sessions, from what I understand, in the conference committee.
Yeah, right,
We'll get the details on it soon, but I think the changes made to what was an industry-driven bill, I think, are going to be much healthier for us as a Commonwealth. Recreational marijuana is coming.
Yep.
The legislature is not putting an end to that, not putting a stop to that, so the will of the voters is going to be respected. But I think the changes and some of the tightening of the restrictions will be for the better for our health, as well as, frankly, for our economy.
Yeah, I agree. I think the voters did vote for legalized adult use last November, although that was not the case in Winchester, but that was the case statewide. And so I think as lawmakers, we saw it as our responsibility to move forward with that implementation in a timely and efficient way, but also at the same time to make sure that we're doing everything possible to protect public health and public safety. Particularly, our concern is we don't want to see increased usage rates among kids. And we have enough problems already with underage marijuana use, underage alcohol use, underage tobacco use, prescription drugs, and others. And we don't want this to lead to even greater use. So I think the final legislation, which we will, we'll make, there'll be a final vote on that also later this week. I think will really put Massachusetts in the forefront of the nation in terms of we'll have a legal market for adults who choose to consume marijuana, but really taking strong steps to protect the public health.
Well, I think one of the advantages for us, I can speak as a constituent, to have our locally elected officials take stances, take important roles in state and regional affairs is a tremendous advantage to us, frankly. And it seems to me, I know you're chairing, Senator Lewis, the committee on public health, and I noticed that you are now on the Regional Council of State Governments Healthcare Task Force, which runs from Canada to Maryland. So I'm just curious, that must be drawing you into other areas of expertise that are going to help us out, I would think.
Well, the whole idea is that we don't always have to reinvent the wheel. That there are strategies that are being pursued in other states. Sometimes it's our neighbors, sometimes further afield. And when it comes to particularly to healthcare cost controls, because we know we have to do more to help manage healthcare costs. What is it that we can learn from some of our neighbors? We just talked about marijuana a moment ago. You know, one of the ways that we were able to, I think, really strengthen the law here was based on what we learned from Colorado and Washington State, some other states that are, you know, ahead of us in terms of that. So the same thing through my work with the council and state governments, it's to really figure out what are the things we could be doing that can improve, you know, in this case, with healthcare, but how do we make it better in Massachusetts so that we continue to have high quality and access for everyone, but also, you know, we have to look at how we can do that in a cost-effective way.
And Representative Day, I understand that you are now elevated, if you will, to be Vice Chairman of the Committee on Personnel in the House. And again, from a local aspect, to have you at the table for larger issues, I think is a big advantage.
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise, frankly, to get the call from the Speaker. As you know, the Chair of the Ways and Means announced his resignation. Brian Dempsey, longtime Chairman of Ways and Means in the House, had handled 7 budgets in a row. So a lot of experience leaving the House. He's been in there for 20 some odd years. And I spoke with him about it, and he said, you know, I've got young kids and got to provide, and now's the time I'm going to do it. So that led to a little bit of a reshuffling of leadership, which created a space at the table for me. And I was pretty thrilled to get the call that I'm now part of the leadership team. So have a bigger voice up on a variety of different issues up there, which I'm looking forward to.
You're on Judiciary and actually the Oversight Committee on lots of other things.
Yeah.
That's a very important spot.
Yeah, I keep reminding people that I've got the subpoena power up there.
That's right.
Not afraid to use it. So, yeah, no, it's been enjoyable. It's really been a
I
ride.
sometimes forget, but I think you're only in your 2nd term,
Yeah.
right? So to be tapped by the Speaker, you know, to move up to being in a leadership position is unusual, and I think
Yeah,
it says a
it
lot
was
for
a-
the good work you're doing,
Well,
and you know,
thanks.
that you're able to obviously get things done and work well, you know, with all the different stakeholders.
I count every
So-
day they don't tell me to leave the building as a bonus. So, to move up the ranks even farther is better.
Tell me, we've talked about education in the past. It's such a key situation for us. I suppose of all the issues, I think healthcare probably is way up on people's agenda, but education is always on everybody's mind, whether they have young children or not. I know you've been involved in Kids First as a program, I understand. I don't know too much about the program itself, but I've read about your involvement in it. I know it's about teaching young people about reading, which is the basis of letting them become better educated later on, but in the very, very early. Is it part of the early education for all type of situation, or what's
Yes.
going on there?
Yes. So the state senate has an initiative that we've been calling Kids First, and I think that's what you're referring
Yes, I saw
to,
that,
and,
yes.
and certainly Rep. Day and many House members are very supportive as well. And so we're looking. The idea is to look all the way from birth,
Yeah.
all the way through essentially high school graduation. And end to end, you know, what are we doing well today, and where could we do better? So far, the focus has been really from birth to, you know, the early grades. That's the initial work we've done, and we came out with a report a month or so ago. And a lot of that is about how do we increase access to quality early education, because there's a lot of research that shows that, you know, if children when they're 2-3 years old are getting access to, you know, high quality childcare, that their odds of being, you know, ready to learn once they get to kindergarten, and, you know, you track them all the way through, you know, through school, the odds of being, you know, successful early learners, and then ultimately graduating from high school is all increased, you know, if you make those investments in early ed. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately and sadly, you know, there's tens of thousands of young children in Massachusetts whose families don't have the means, you know, to pay for early education, and there is not enough vouchers available to help support those families. So it's really a problem we need to address, because these kids, you know, deserve a good start in life, and they're not getting it right now.
Yeah, no, it's all about a good start, no question, huh? I'm jumping around a little bit, but you've both been involved in so many different things. And Representative Day, I'm thinking, you were active on an epilepsy bill with Dr. Kyriakopoulos.
Yes, Winchester.
And I think we'd be interested to know more about that. I think you helped us get by where you don't need 3 tests to get to.
Well, that's the issue.
Okay.
Currently, the Mass Health system requires an individual who's suffering from epilepsy and being treated to fail first 3 times on 3 separate medications before they'll allow the physician to prescribe the medication that they actually want to prescribe. The intent back when the protocol is set up is that we can put somebody on a generic drug for much cheaper, costing the Mass Health system a lot less to do so. And what's occurred, obviously, after 3 fail firsts, to really great detriment to people's individual health, but also to the cost to Mass Health itself. I think it's about 55% of individuals respond favorably to the first generic. Those that don't go on to the second fail first scenario, and that drops to 13% of success rate. And then they have to go to a third protocol in Massachusetts, and that drops to 5% of success rate. So if you look at the numbers, take out the individual health implications, the numbers don't support this protocol anymore. And we've got a long track record of what happens here. So the bill I proposed would say you can fail first once. If you are prescribed a certain medication, you go to the generic, and if that doesn't work, then the doctor is allowed to then say that drug's going to be covered by Mass Health. Okay. Epilepsy, the impacts on individuals suffering from this, they often have to take a cocktail of drugs, and to get that regimen correct is a delicate dance. And when I first saw the issue, and I said 3 times we're requiring people to fail, 3 times medications aren't working before we go to one that we know is going to work. To me seems, not only bad business, but immoral that we're requiring this sort of stuff. And I know people kind of shy away from morality talk with laws, but to me it's crazy that we're forcing individuals to put their lives in jeopardy, frankly, 3 times before we cover it. So that was heard. Senator Lewis again manning the helm of that one about a week or 2 ago, and Dr. Kyriakopoulos came in for Winchester as well with a panel from the Epilepsy Foundation. So hopeful that we've got some progress on that.
Well, that's great, and I don't want to let the whole half hour go without talking about what you're doing to help develop the economy. These are all programs in healthcare and education that are so vital, but we need to be able to finance them, and a lot of what we're doing to have people be healthy and be well educated is to be productive in the economy too, and that's a good matchup. And we have, as the chair of Labor and Workforce Development, and somebody active so much in our own downtown economic development for Winchester, commuter rail station, everything. So talk a little bit about what you see happening in the next year or so, hopefully for us at the local level. It's really going to be productive.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned the certainly the local infrastructure, and that's that's the top priority for both Mike and myself. Is really what do we need to do to continue to invest in our district, and in Winchester, obviously, the high school is coming to a completion, which is such an important investment for our community to have a modern, accessible, well-equipped high school. And so that project is wrapping up now this summer, and I think it's gone very extraordinarily well. And then really another big project that's underway is the Winchester Center commuter rail station, and we're still finishing up the design of the rebuilt station, but that will then move into the construction phase, which is going to really completely rebuild that station. So I think along with the investment in our schools, the investment in our transportation infrastructure, the investment that's happening in the downtown to encourage more housing development, which is we're also beginning to see some of the fruits of that. I think that's just going to continue to revitalize the town and make it even more desirable place, I think, to live and to work and raise a family.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of shovels in the ground the next year or so. So any complaints about that work can go this way. Take the credit for the grants that we're able to secure. But no, we've been working hard on making sure that this momentum that the townspeople have built in Winchester in their downtown revitalization really gets amplified as we go forward. So I'm excited about getting the final concepts down on the commuter rail station, working to make sure that money stays in place. The flood mitigation work that's been going on
Yep.
down at the high school and in between the rivers, the ponds.
Yeah.
All great stuff, all stuff that you don't really see.
Yeah.
Obviously the high school you can see and take pride in. But a lot of work being done on infrastructure that you don't see. Obviously we've seen the Mount Vernon Bridge, although a few other bridge projects going on really dedicated to maintaining and improving our infrastructure to allow new storefronts to open up and be successful, which we've seen in Winchester. It's been a really nice, I was speaking with the chamber the other day, and I said, I'm kind of strutting around the State House because people who come through Winchester compliment me all the time on the downtown, how beautiful it looks, and the storefronts are full, and people are walking around shopping. So we want to amplify that and continue to build that as we go forward.
And that's certainly not true everywhere. You
No.
know, there are many of our downtowns in many other cities and towns that are struggling. You know, with online commerce, with big box stores. So, it takes active effort from the local community, from the Chamber of Commerce, the town, the residents of the town, the local elected officials, state, to kind of really work together to help encourage that downtown revitalization, because otherwise it doesn't just happen.
Buy local.
That's right.
Yeah,
Buy local.
yeah. Making it attractive, encouraging people to come downtown, shop downtown, eat downtown. The infrastructure is a piece of that, and supporting the local businesses. But it's good to see how that is going well in Winchester.
Well, it takes leadership to make it happen, and a commitment that it's what people want to see happen, and I think there's an excitement about what's ahead. So congratulations on staying in the middle of that, and we appreciate it on our end of it. Now, we only have a couple of minutes because we're getting near the end, and there's so much to talk about. Just give you a chance, maybe a minute apiece, but I know the Senate had its Commonwealth conversations, the House has had its. You gentlemen are out on the front line every single day. How do people feel? How are things going? I know that I don't want to talk about federal because we know that there are things to improve there that we don't have to do at this table yet. But how do you see things going at the local level as far as the voters are concerned? Let me start with you, Representative.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have a lot of angst over the federal government and what's happening or what's not happening out of Washington, D.C. I think, certainly speaking from where I sit in the State House, we're, I guess the silver lining to that angst is that it's given us a little more, I guess, emboldenment to continue to push forward and continue to bring Massachusetts forward.
Right.
And so legislation and ideas that may have died on the vine in previous years are getting actual hearings and real momentum behind them. The Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act, which had been bandied about for quite a while, one of the first things we got through, and really on a unanimous basis. It was a bipartisan vote that came through on that bill. So you're seeing people really, certainly in the legislature, I think, coming together and working out differences, the business community coming to the table, and realizing that we're in a great position here in Massachusetts, in the nation, and we want to make sure that we continue to move forward here in Massachusetts. And really, we'll deal with the federal stuff as it comes, but continue our focus on improving Massachusetts' lives. I mean, we were ranked the top state in the nation to live in for our economy, for our healthcare system, for our health of our individuals, and our education system. So we want to continue building on that, and I think we've got a good group of legislators that are all really, rowing in the same direction, to use that phrase again.
That's great.
No matter what the party split.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
just have a half a minute or so,
you
but
said
give
it
us
well. I think we keep an eye on Washington, of course, because we're not immune to what's happening there. But I think it's putting even more of the focus on what can we do at the local level and what can we do at the state level to work in a bipartisan manner. And obviously, we work very closely with our governor, Charlie Baker, and look for real solutions. Because we want to continue to move forward on economic development, on transportation, education, healthcare, the environment. We may remain committed to fighting climate change. So all these things, and we can really continue to be a leader on those issues.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'd love to have another 30 minutes. We'll do it another time, though. Senator Jason Lewis, Representative Michael
Thanks,
Day.
Al.
Gee whiz, thanks for joining us in the State House, and to all of the folks out there in the Windcam area, thank you for joining us for this conversation. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon.